Okay, so I talked to Kat um, for about an hour
Yeah,
earlier this week,
I did.
and we had an interesting conversation. One of the things that came out in the conversation, though, is that she is kind of convinced that um, transmaxing and transhumanism have a significant overlap,
Let's see.
but she suggested that you don't agree with that view, or that's not sort of a term that you might use to describe transhuman to transmaxing rather. Um,
Let's see. The thing is that I'm not really comfortable, like, just going on board with that ideology. I have not really researched it, what it really means, but from what I heard, it's not really something I feel like I should like push from the like my limited reading about it. But I'm not sure exactly what transhumanism even means. But I don't really like relying a lot of technology and becoming dependent on it for our survival. I don't think like it's a good idea. Yeah, let's say for
I only really
example,
got fragments of your response. Yeah.
you get an artificial heart and you connect it to the
Right.
internet. And what might then happen is that someone hacks your like artificial heart and kills you because it's digital. So I don't think you want to rely on technology too much. You want to like make sure that even if like technology fails, you can still live on.
About that. So, what is this? The artificial heart? I don't think I got. Is that sort of on transhumanism?
Yeah,
Skepticism about transhumanism, or
yeah, that's just one example of how it can go wrong. There's also like many examples of it, like even in video games. For example, Observer System Redux is like a good case against transhumanism. If you have like played that game or even like watch a video about it, you can see how badly it can go when you go too far that route.
yeah, I mean, so well, I should say the audio is still cutting out a little bit, so I'm not sure I got all of that. But it seems like if transhumanism is just, it depends, I guess, on how we define it, right? But if it's just using technology to somehow advance or extend human life, then it might not necessarily involve, I mean, it could be using a bicycle on some level as a form of transhumanism to
Yeah,
the extent that it like,
but that's not what people mean by it. It's typical stuff like
right,
merging
yeah.
with like technology, uploading your consciousness and stuff like that. Or like the Elon Musk idea with Neuralink, which is total insanity, by the way. Like if you like just look into it, it's really really bad.
Yeah, yeah. But so, I mean, to the extent that the transmaxing is kind of using um, hormones and it's using medical technology
Yeah,
to,
but the hormones are natural human hormones. You work just with your normal biology, and while it is true that if you stop the hormones, you will become like masculine again if you are MTF. It's not like you will die or anything. You're not super dependent on it. You can survive without it. You might just affect your appearance. And you don't.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I kind of just want to know more though about like why you wanted to start. Well, I guess, I mean, you put together the manifesto, right?
Yeah, if you're asking about my motivation, it's kind of complicated, and I like cannot give you like an easy answer. But of course, I want to like help people build this community to change the world for the better. Like I was like interested in politics for a really long time, but I wasn't really able to change anything. But at least now I am able to have an impact, and I'm glad for that at least. But and also I do think the trans community had problems and still have to some extent, so I wanted to make something better.
So I got that you are glad to have an impact. I heard that. And that maybe you were involved in politics for a while, but that it's kind of, I sort of get like half of your sense. One thing that interests me is who do you think are, do you think that the only people who would benefit from transmaxing are people who already experience dysphoria? Or is there a possibility that someone who
No,
has
I
not
don't
experienced?
think you need dysphoria to benefit from transitioning.
Yeah.
I think it might be that
But
most
so,
people with
yeah.
dysphoria don't benefit from it though. It is like hard to tell because we don't really have the studies on that.
And what do you think is the sort of the profile of, if there is a general profile of someone who might benefit, if it's not dysphoria? Because I think the sense I got from Kat is that many people, in her opinion, people who don't have dysphoria but do pursue transition for sort of transmax reasons will eventually find out they have dysphoria. But it sounds like you might not have that position.
I mean, we don't really have many people here who didn't have dysphoria, so we don't really have like much to go on. But like, if you live a really bad life as a male, let's say for example you're homeless, like really low social status, really bad life, like then you don't really have much to lose by transitioning. Like if let's say, or you have like a job but you don't have any girlfriend, you don't have like no social life. Like if you and your job is really bad, like in these cases, what do you have to lose by like gambling on a transition?
Yeah, I mean, so it's basically like a last resort, it sounds like, for some people, where if you've tried other things and you're still not able to maybe get a girlfriend or, you know, build a community or otherwise integrate yourself into society, this might be an option.
Yeah, the issue is that it's kind of time limited too, because for the HOT to be effective you need to start early, but then you don't really have time to try everything fast. You need to like make a decision, are you going to like keep trying to fix your life as a male, or are you going to instead try transitioning, because once you have like failed totally and completely as a male, you probably will not be able to pass, so that's maybe an issue with that idea.
Age, it becomes more difficult to pass. Is that the idea?
Yeah, and if you then like try everything fast, it will be too late then to pass. That's the issue.
Yeah, because I get.
Yeah, you cut out.
Because I get. I mean, what if you don't pass? Then I guess you kind of don't. Would you say like the transition sort of doesn't really provide the benefits that it otherwise would?
Yeah, it can even be detrimental. You don't get as nice as a body, so you might not like your own appearance as much, and you will have a harder time dating, and you will have a harder time socially. So you will lose out a lot of benefits by not doing an early transition. It's harder to justify later on.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that when I sort of found the Transmaxxing manifesto and talked to my editor about wanting to write about sort of the philosophy behind it and stuff, he didn't think it was. He sort of thought that it was. He didn't think that it was something that people actually do. But it seems from talking to you and Kat and some people in the forum that there are people who have actually transitioned for transhumanism recently. Do you know anyone who's transitioned who's actually like said who's sort of forthright about the fact that they might not have experienced dysphoria beforehand or something along
Yeah,
those lines?
I'm not going to mention anyone, but there are
Oh yeah,
like,
not by name. I'm just curious about the
yeah, there
general
are.
phenomenon.
I have come across it in this server. It's not that common. Yeah, most people who show up here had dysphoria. So they are like looking here because they don't want to bullshit up other spaces, because like in here, so in this server we have like people who know a lot about HRT and how to effectively transition. We don't really care too much about like the mainstream ideology about it. So people like it for that reason mostly, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing that stood out to me. I mean, there's a bunch of things stuck to me in the manifesto, but one of them was that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like the manifesto sort of advises pursuing, not necessarily pursuing medical transition through institutional channels, like not necessarily. I mean, maybe you would eventually get diagnosed with gender dysphoria, but potentially procuring hormones through other channels and not necessarily trusting therapists.
Yeah, I'm
It
not.
seems like now there's this whole. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'm not like saying that you shouldn't like go to a doctor. It kind of
Yeah, yeah.
depends on the if you have like a good endocrinologist and you like what your doctor does and you like get the hormone therapy that works for you, then of course you can do that. But I discovered was that a lot of people, when they try to go the official channel, they need to either wait for years, and even if they get it, they might not get the hormone therapy that is like best for them. Like a lot of doctors don't want to do monotherapy. They instead want to prescribe a lower dosage of oral estradiol and antiandrogens, which is at least long term not the best option. You want to eventually switch to probably injections, but and only do injection, not taking antiandrogens, because that's the safest and most effective method. But a lot of doctors haven't adopted that yet, and this is a big problem. So even if you find someone official, it might not be a good doctor. But I don't really know how good the official channels are, because I don't really have too many people talking about it. So it just depends on if you find someone good, it might be the best way. But if you cannot get access to that, which might be very difficult, you need to go do it. There are like some sites that sell HRT without prescription. That might be an option for you. Or if you have a prescription, might be able to order it online that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, is the concern that if you get too low a dose um, of estrogen, that the changes won't. I'm not sure I entirely heard what you said, but I think
Yeah,
if you're not prescribed the correct dose, yeah.
Yeah, the issue is not necessarily in terms of feminization, because like even if you start on a low dose, you can just switch later to a high dose, and if you then have been on anti-androgens, they will not be negative in terms of feminization long term. The issue is with regard to your health, because anti-androgens are unhealthy for your body. So you don't want to be for too long low on both sex hormones. It's about health reason mostly, rather than like getting the most changes. I'm not like convinced that you will get more feminization from monotherapy, especially not if you like start on it. It might even be counterproductive, to be honest.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask, I mean, there's this in the manifesto talks about how some men have become obsolete because there's this transition from manual labor to automated labor,
Yeah.
virtual work done in virtual container.
I didn't hear all your question, but you can try to answer anyway. Yeah, there is this societal problem that a lot of males are kind of obsolete, that they are not really needed for society anymore. And this was actually kind of my original idea, that we can maybe find some other way that if they then transition to female, they can feel like they become desired by the male society again. I'm not sure if
Wait,
that
can you
is...
repeat that last sentence? Because it just cut out. You just cut out.
Yeah, that was one of the ideas, that you can have people transition to female instead of being like totally obsolete as males. This was like the original motivation, maybe, at least part of it. But I'm not sure if that is like the right path to solve that issue. It's just one idea I had.
Class of men, for this subsection of men that no longer might have a place in society. Transition could be a good option. Transition to female could be a good option. Or is it just for their sort of psychological and psychological well-being, or is there also a social benefit that you see potentially connected to this?
Yeah, this is complicated. You do want to like, I think most people want to live a life where they feel like they have a place in society. Like you have a social network, you have a close relationships, like a girlfriend. You have like a job where you feel like you do some meaningful work. And today a lot of people don't really have that. A lot of people might live on welfare. They might not have any partner at all, might have only a few friends, and might not really have anything going for them. And I think these people might be interested in transitioning to live a better life as a female. It's not just about like having sex. I don't think that's the most important thing about transitioning.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is it seems like there's clearly this problem where a class of men in our society is disenfranchised and sort of unable to, find meaningful work or meaningful relationships. And I guess it seems like the Transmaxxing solution is quite different from like what someone like Andrew Tate might propose to those guys, which is just
the thing with Andrew Tate is that his advice can actually work for some males, I think, but the thing is, what he advises is that you just outcompete other males, so then they end up having to transmax instead of you. That's pretty much it. Like, you're not like reducing the problem for society, just like changing it around. So maybe like some males become more successful by exploiting other males, which is also what Andrew Tate is kind of doing. Like he has this subscription bullshit where people pay him for bullshit advice on his server. And so I see that a lot. So he is like monetizing desperate males and making money off them. It's not really helping males as a whole, just maybe some of them.
Okay, so what I got is that Andrew Tate, his advice can help some males, but he's monetizing the advice that he's monetizing his whole platform. So he's making them pay to participate in this. What was the process of putting together the manifesto? I mean, did you, because there's a lot of sort of personal testimonies from people who have transitioned. Did you collect this information, or did you just sort of assemble pre-existing information that you found?
It was not just all pre-existing. I did collect like testimonials, and then I wrote stuff myself, and the scientific stuff was pretty much only written by me. I don't think anyone else really contributed to that. So when it comes to like the hard science stuff, I did pretty much all of that. But when it comes to testimonials, I had to include it because I like cannot fake testimonials. Like I need to like take something that might at least be genuine.
I know these questions are very out of order. I'm just sort of scrolling through the manifesto and looking things I marked. There's a distinction in the manifesto between direct and indirect gender dysphoria. And it's interesting because indirect gender dysphoria is, I mean, the examples that are given are, you know, military conscription, not being able to find partners, and then maybe it's like, and it's interesting. I mean, it just sort of seems interesting to categorize those things as indirect gender dysphoria, because I guess it suggests that the issues are not necessarily with the fact of, for example, the fact of military conscription itself, but just a person's relationship to certain aspects of society. I don't know if that formulation makes sense, but
I think I get what you mean, and I can see why people take issue with it, because you could argue that conscription should not even be a thing. It might not even be militarily efficient anymore to do so. But I do think that rooted also that some aspect of like gender roles are kind of biological of origin, so and hard to change. It's not just like evolution by natural selection. It's also the societies have to compete against each other, and then they have to like implement policies to make them competitive, or they will like be overtaken. So you will have certain rules emerge naturally, and sure, you might say that this is like society's fault, but it might be not be something you can escape from really. So you might view that as gender dysphoria indirectly, even though it's kind of caused by society. But it kind of depends on what issue it like. I never had to like do military service, for example.
no, I think it's an interesting concept. It does make sense in many ways. I sort of wonder, advantageous maybe for a female to transition to male in a similar way to male transition to female for black reasons.
Personally, I will be fine with just banning FTM transition altogether. Not necessarily because there are no one who will benefit from it. I don't think it should be like allowed for societal reasons mostly. Like there are some studies indicating that like MTF transition does better, but the main reason for I would ban it if I could was for the good of society as a whole, and not to like protect people from their own stupidity. It's not about that really. Yeah, what I said was that I will probably ban FDM transition if I could for the benefit of society, because I think it does more harm than good for society as a whole, and I believe that it's more important than the individual.